makes the one-timer. Now a shot, score, a goal, and Massachusetts takes the lead.
And welcome in to the NewMass Minute. Jay Burnham alongside Nathan Strauss talking UMass hockey, and the season is officially underway. Nate, good to see you, my friend. A lot of action last weekend and more in store this weekend. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. I mean, I'm just looking at your Minutemen hockey home field apparel sweater that you've got on right now. It looks very comfortable.
I could be their spokesperson for sure. Hopefully we can get them to send us some stuff at some point this season. Okay, in this rundown, we'll start at the top. UMass opening up the season on the road at Bentley with a 5-4 win. Win number 150 for head coach Greg Carvel. What does that mean for him in this program?
Well, it's great, Jay, because we talked to him at the beginning of the season, and it's not the only milestone that he's approaching this year. He's now, again, just over a dozen wins shy of becoming the all-time program leader in wins. And in typical Greg Carvel fashion, I think he downplayed the importance of it. And I think the words he used were, anytime you're at a place for long enough, you're going to hit numbers like that, right? But it is a real big achievement, especially when you consider the fact that his first year was the losingest season in UMass hockey history. He holds the record for the losingest and winningest season ever at UMass. You think about the kind of person who is able to sustain a program and to grow a program like he did from year one to the national championship and to now. I think it's just a real testament to the stability of the program, his integrity as a coach and a leader. And while he might not be putting any stock in 150 wins, it's great to see.
Yeah, it goes to show kind of the building blocks that have to be put in place, and that can certainly take time. And I know that's frustrating when you look at from a fan's perspective at a program, but I think it's the proof is in the pudding, of course, of what he can do. And in baseball, we call those counting stats, right? You get enough of them, you end up enough at bats, you get enough RBIs, but it's a little bit different as a head coach of a program that you've sort of kind of reinvented with this identity. And certainly a good start to the season, a 5-4 win on the road. You had a pretty comfortable lead heading into that third period, gave up some goals late. What was your impression of that overall performance?
I mean, I think Bentley is a better team than people might realize. Last year they took a BU team to overtime in the opening game of the season, and UMass played their game pretty well for the first 45 minutes or so. The details, I think, slipped a little bit late on, but I think that's to be expected, right? With a lot of first-year players, and while obviously it's not something that's going to be accepted, when you come away with a win, you're 1 minute away from this being a 5-2 victory, which I think feels a lot better than a 5-4 victory. Yeah. But all things considered, I mean, it's a good win. I think particularly going forward, seeing what Idar Suniev did in particular was really, really enlightening as far as the outlook for this season ahead.
You would ask Coach Carv in the press rundown this week about Suniev and his ability. Of course, the hat trick was phenomenal, and I think you asked him for a comparison. What was the response that you got?
So it goes back to a question that I asked him 5 years ago about John Leonard, who was another prodigious goal scorer. He was going to run away with the NCAA lead in goals in the COVID year. And I think in my naivete, I asked him, is this the best goal scorer you've ever coached? And he just looked right back at me and goes, well, I coached Sergei Fedorov, who is one of the best goal scorers of all time and who put up, I think, 50 goals 20 years ago. It was either I who asked, it might have been Evan Marinovsky. I was in the presser. I'm forgetting the details of the story, a long time ago. But I said, look, I know you've coached some absolutely elite players over the course of his time in the NHL and the AHL as well. Is there a comparison to what Idar is? And he said, Danny Heatley, the Heat Daddy, who was an excellent goal scorer. But the thing he said was he's just a sniper. When he gets the puck, he wants to shoot and he makes shots happen. And Carv said, look, sometimes teammates might get a little frustrated with that, but they're not frustrated when you're scoring.
Yeah.
And that shoot first, that sniper mentality is, I think, was really on display for Suniev this Saturday.
It's funny because during the offseason, and we'll talk a lot about these classes, and Suniev was one of the pieces that we talked about at the beginning in terms of, hey, this freshman class is going to rely on him and Musa and Las Schmilis, and getting off to that great start for him. The hat trick, certainly something you like to see. I'm going to add a segment into this show every week. And I think I'm going to pull some comments from Coach Carv after a game or for his presser. And one thing I think we haven't really talked a lot about is Cole O'Hara. And he had mentioned that last year he got off to a slow start. He picked it up in the second half. And against Bentley, he said he was their best forward. Now, that despite the fact that Sunyev had 3 goals, what did you make of that? And maybe we haven't, I guess, in the offseason underlined how important O'Hara can be to this team.
Yeah, I mean, look, O'Hara is a fourth round pick, and typically players who are picked in that the sort of middle rounds of the draft are the guys with real pedigree. And by the Predators to an organization that has trusted Greg Carvel with development in the past. In his freshman year, 4 goals, 13 assists, and then last year, 7 goals, 11 assists. The goal scoring has continued to rise. For me, the big thing is his confidence. I think he can really make plays with the puck on his stick. He's got good vision, but also really good hockey IQ. And some of the passes he attempts, some of the positions on the ice that he gets to, I think he's more active in those spaces when he's confident. And I think a performance like he had on Saturday, as Greg Carvel alluded to, really will help set the stage for him. Especially, if he can be one of your team's leading scorers, that's a huge step up, especially if he can go from, 4 goals to 7 goals. Can he get 10 this year?
Yeah.
That would be huge for this UMass team as far as depth of scoring goes.
He said what he's doing with the puck is much better, and he could have I think he phrased it as he could have an impactful year, or it could be an amazing year, depending on how far he goes in his progression. So just wanted to highlight that from some of the comments he had for O'Hara out of Ontario. Now, the new guys, right? We talked about them last week in the open, some of these guys, and you got first career points for Keenan, Loftus, and Jančko. First goal for him. What was your impression of those three as they took the ice for the first time?
Well, it's interesting because I thought Jančko is the guy who maybe we've talked about less than he has deserved in this freshman class, in part because the minutes that Keenan, Delelchi, and Loftus are going to play are so big, just given the personnel. But Jančko, I thought, after the first period, was really impactful, noticeable every time he touched the ice. And he does bring that international pedigree, a guy who's competed for Slovakia at, various youth international events, and maybe flew a little bit under the radar as a recruiting ad for this UMass team. But I thought he really was noticeable out there, which is good. Sometimes freshmen in game 1, game 2, game 3, when you're noticing them, it's maybe they're in the wrong spot. But no, I thought Jančko fit in really nicely with the structure of UMass. And obviously, structure can also be learned as the year goes on. And then on the back end, I really like the pairing of Keenan and Delelchi. I thought they looked good together. I like that he keeps them paired together as well on the penalty kill, because so much of chemistry is intuitive. But then the other part of it is just experience, right? You know where the other guy is going to be. You can pick up on patterns. You know when so-and-so is going to wheel, when they're going to look for an outlet pass. So I like that a lot. And I think getting the points, for Finn Loftus is great as well. And all three of them, I think, are going to continue to see huge minutes this year. But again, starting off game 1 with a win and the points, I think, is extra helpful.
I should have mentioned this at the top. We're going to be joined in a couple of moments by Eddie Olczyk. He's a former UMass player from 2009 to 2013 class and is now an amateur scout for the Seattle Kraken. And we really appreciate him taking the time, literally as we record this, the day after the Kraken's season started, to kick off the triple header for the NHL. So excited to get his perspective on a couple of things. And one of those things that we'll ask him about is, and something that you guys have kind of talked about in the inner circles, is the potential for players from the CHL to eventually be able to play in the NCAA, which could uproot kind of the structure of how things operate. Can you explain, what those implications are and where we are in that time frame?
Yeah, so I think the big divide, the big schism in college, in sort of developmental hockey in North America over the last 30 years has been the CHL and NCAA divide. The CHL is considered a professional league by the NCAA because the NHL has an agreement with the CHL that allows players who have signed NHL contracts to be assigned to their junior team, their major junior team in the CHL. And for those reasons, because in theory, a player in the CHL is competing against a professional player, someone who has signed a pro contract. They're not getting paid pro money, but someone who has signed a pro contract.
You get a stipend, right?
You get a stipend. You get education covered in youth sports. It's been a professional league. So players at a young age, at the age of 15, 16, when you're drafted by a CHL team, you have to kind of make the choice. Are you going to take the CHL route, or are you going to stick to the USHL, or other junior hockey leagues like the BCHL, the AJHL, that then feed into the NCAA and let people stay amateurs. Now, about 20 years ago, in 1996, the US created the NTDP. I'm not going to get too into the history, Jay. I know we have
Love
a
it.
time crunch. I saw that look. But the US basically created a program, the program, the National Development Team program in Michigan, that was designed to keep in part to keep high-level American prospects in America. And in 2010, that program moved into the USHL, which is the premier the tier one junior league in the United States. The USHL per team has more drafted players than the CHL. The CHL skews slightly younger than the USHL and also has more first and second round picks because teams want to sign those first round picks, right? You sign them, you give them a chance in training camp. If they don't stick, you can assign them to the CHL. So the reason this is going to be important for college hockey is because when CHL players are now eligible for the NCAA, they're going to be 20, 21 years old. They're going to have been playing against top competition in the sense of elite first round players. And they're now going to be able to come play 4 years in college hockey. And this is one of the situations where, and Greg Carvel was really candid about this yesterday. And I thought it was great to hear the way the NCAA and the way rulings have been going lately. It is clearly legally the right thing, right? We're talking about an era of amateurism that is not really existent anymore. It's clearly like legally, you play against pros, you can play here. Tennis players are allowed to compete at all levels. Don Millis plays against senior players for Team Latvia. That it's an era of amateurism that is ending. I'm still not sure that it's good for the sport, though. And that's kind of what Greg Carvel was saying. It's right, but maybe not good because players do have to make the choice whether you're going to go the junior A route in the US and play in the USHL with a specific goal of playing college hockey, or, hey, I'm going to go to Saginaw, or I'm going to go to Rimouski, or I'm going to go to Bradenton, like Braden, like, you know.
It sounds like maybe there'll be less opportunity for some guys, maybe are later developers in life or in the college game, and that's where they kind of are able to take the next step forward. It could box guys out from opportunity at the NCAA level.
Yeah, and I think the real loser here is not the USHL, but it's going to be the smaller junior leagues like the AJHL, who already lost 5 teams to the BCHL. Because if you're looking at, hey, would we rather take an undrafted kid, a grinder, a bottom six type from, the from the AJHL who's 19 or 20, or would we rather take a 21-year-old man who spent the last 4 years playing in the CHL? So I asked Carv, I asked him, like, is this the kind of person who you would want to recruit? And he said, honestly, like the older teams in college hockey tend to be winninger teams. And age matters more than pedigree. So a first round draft pick hasn't won a college title in over a decade. The older team in the national championship game has won in 7 of the last 8 years. The only exception to that was UMass in 2021. So it might not change that much for UMass because Carv and this recruiting staff and this coaching staff have their identity. But what it will change is the opportunities for some, particularly American players, and there will be a trickle down effect across the leagues.
And
But
there could also be unintended consequences and other things that happen. So I just wanted to mention that. I heard you guys talking about it. I'll ask Eddie Olczyk about it as well, as he's in the amateur scouting game. So certainly can change things. We'll keep an eye on that as we go forward this season. And before we bring in UMass alum Eddie Olczyk, I just wanted to set up this weekend for UMass hockey going out to Las Vegas to play in the Icebreaker tournament. We'll take on number 15 Omaha out of the NCHC, a team that has played one game so far, just like UMass. They lost in overtime to a team out of the Big Ten. I can't remember who exactly. And they were in the NCAA tournament last year, lost to Minnesota. So this is kind of a really good gut check right out of the gate for UMass to start off in this matchup in the tournament.
yeah, they lost to Wisconsin, one of the top 10 teams, and it was an exhibition too. So there's not a whole lot to take away from that. The same way there isn't much to take away from UMass's game on Sunday, but this is far and away the biggest game on UMass's non-conference schedule, and it's not particularly close in terms of how the schedule is shaken out. The NCHC is an incredibly competitive league, top to bottom, and by winning a game against Omaha, you're going to get pairwise results because of how many times Omaha is going to be taking on teams like North Dakota and Denver and Colorado College and Western Michigan and Minnesota State over the course of their schedule too, like St. Cloud State. they have a really tough schedule. It's going to be super helpful over the course of this season. And it's not to say that all hope is lost if they don't win this game at all. But as far as the other teams that UMass has lined up with the tournament in Arizona as well, it's a huge chance to really establish yourselves against a team who is basically in the exact same spot as you.
That's a 10:30 puck drop.
It's a 7 o'clock
7 o'clock.
puck drop here, Eastern, 4 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. Cooper Boardman and I will be out there. Cooper's flying out tomorrow.
Well,
I'm flying
let
out
me ask
on
you
Friday.
this. As you look at, okay, winner takes on the winner of Minnesota or Air Force, which will be the following day on Saturday. As a UMass fan, are you hoping that it's going to be a number 5 ranked Minnesota team?
Always, you always, this is something that is different for college hockey than maybe hoops or other sports where the net and RPI, all these things come into play too. You always root for your conference and you always root to play the hardest opponents possible because this formula values losing to a more competitive team than beating a less competitive team oftentimes, especially when it's some like the disparity between Air Force and Minnesota and pairwise could be like 50 by the time this season ends. You would much rather play Minnesota, a team that will, again, play 6 teams that are going to be top 20 in pairwise when this season is over in conference play. So without a doubt. And also, it's never too early to start rooting for other Hockey East teams in all of their games. In any non-conference matchup, root for Hockey East teams, as foreign as it may be to root for a BU or a BC in Northeastern. That is why, one of the big reasons why UMass was able to get into the tournament last year, because Hockey East was far and away the best performing conference in the non-con.
So 7 o'clock Friday, Omaha, number 15. And then on Saturday, Minnesota or Air Force. You and Cooper will be out there. Of course, we will be here for football hosting Missouri. That is our NewMass Minute. Nathan, we'll say goodbye to you. Thanks so much, my friend.
Thank you for having me. Let's have fun with Mizzou.
All right. We shall see as we'll show you what's coming up. And then we'll be joined by Eddie Olczyk as he makes his return to our airwaves, former UMass Minuteman and now currently with the Kraken. We continue on our NewMass Minute with UMass alum, currently a scout with the Seattle Kraken. Eddie Olczyk joins us now from Chicago. Eddie, good to see you, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Jay. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
We're talking literally a day after the NHL season has begun. So I'm curious to get your thoughts as to some of your responsibilities, and we appreciate you taking that time. But how are you in general after, leaving UMass? Give us a little synopsis as to your career path and where you are today.
Yeah, doing great. Graduated back with the great class of 2013. Got into coaching, coached Division III at Utica College, then got an opportunity to go to Niagara University, Division I for 1 year, and then coached 4 years at Bemidji State University up in Minnesota for the great Tom Serratori, and then got an opportunity to come in with the Seattle Kraken, general manager Ron Francis, to get in a ground floor opportunity with a brand new NHL franchise, and gave me the opportunity, my wife and family and I, to move back home to Chicago. So this has been a really special opportunity, really appreciative to be with such a great organization. And essentially my role kind of, I'm an amateur scout, so following kids all around the United States is my territory for the draft. And then I also, on top of that, do NCAA college free agents, so late bloomers, kids that went through the draft, tracking them and yeah.
What I think people might have heard there is there's a lot of moving around in this business and in this job. So at least it sounds like you've got some stability as a scout with kind of a hub in Chicago, but obviously looking out across the entirety of the United States. When you're looking at some of those late bloomers, as you mentioned, and I know UMass over the years have had a few, what are you looking for as a scout and how do you efficiently evaluate talent?
Well, I think there's a lot of different things that kind of go into that. I think you're looking, the game it's definitely so fast. It's faster than it's ever been. So I think skating is for sure a really important thing that you have to have. And if you don't have that, you probably have to be a really smart player. You have to have a really high IQ or hockey sense. And obviously we want talent. You want people who can help contribute, help you put pucks in the back of the net, and for sure compete. Those are a lot of different types of areas, and if you don't have one, you better have the other things to kind of offset it. But first and foremost, we want good people in our organization. Character really matters a lot to the people up at the top and throughout our organization. We're fortunate to have a lot of really good people on board that are all pushing and pulling towards the same common goal. So there's a lot of different factors that kind of go into that. Maybe why players go under the radar, they develop a little bit later, but you try to kind of crack the code and dig in and do your due diligence and your background work while you're also trying to evaluate the talent.
Are you ever able to maybe talk to a kid who's kind of maybe on the verge and you say, hey, look, here's some of the things that we need you to work on for you to take the next step?
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of the nowadays with kids, they're getting advice from a lot of different people, their agents,
For
their
better or
parents,
worse,
their
right?
coaches. Yeah, exactly. So I think you kind of just try to pick your spots a little bit in terms of kind of, what you're looking for, or you can kind of go through the agent or the coach and they can kind of flip them that information. But you hope that the way they play the game, you don't kind of have to push them or pull stuff out of them for the most part. And usually a lot of these kids that are, potential free agent guys, they're already a little bit older. They're going on 21, 22, 23. So you're getting a pretty good idea of kind of what they're going to be at a certain point, as opposed to a young prospect who was just picked in the draft and they've got, a 4 to 5 year window before you can kind of figure out which way they're going to go.
We've been talking on this show about the kind of maybe some moves for the CHL and the implications it might have for some of those guys to be able to play in the NCAA, and what that might mean for other leagues like the USHL, which you played in before you got to UMass. What are your thoughts? Have you had a chance to maybe digest any of that information?
It's it's just hard for me to wrap my head around it. Obviously being in, coaching college hockey at Bemidji State, um, learned a lot. We had to find different ways to get players there. And I think essentially what happens now is just the player pool, it just expands so much. There's so many different things with, maybe even the NHL is going to have to look at with the CBA with some of these players that are drafted that haven't been signed. What happens with their rights, because you'd have to sign them after they're 20 if they're playing their 3 years in major junior. And what happens if a player after his first year getting picked goes to college? Does he only have 2 years or does he get an extension? I don't know, but all I do know is that these college coaches are going to be running around all over the place because with the CHL looking like it's going to open, it's going to be a whole new world of opportunity. And obviously, there's only so many teams and so many spots. So it'll be interesting to kind of see what the trickle down and kind of what that effect has on, junior hockey across the board.
Yeah, I know head coach Greg Carvel here has kind of chimed in a little bit in his press conference last week, but so goes the world of NCAA athletics as a whole, right? In the last 5, 6, 7 years, everything kind of going topsy-turvy. So we appreciate that insight. Now, I went on your bio on the UMass website. We might have to change this because it says the first line is the last game you played, you missed the last game due to injury. What do you remember about that 2012, 2013 season and, your time at UMass as a whole?
Well, I would think just in general, I think, you get a little bit older, you build a family, you're removed from playing college hockey. And I think for me, just what's happened with me is I've just gained a lot of respect and appreciation for all the coaches that I've had in my career from youth hockey, junior to college. Now being on the other side of this, knowing the time, effort, and energy that it takes and the sacrifice, to find players and to help build a team. You don't think about when you're a player, you're just pretty singularly focused. You're trying to develop, trying to get more ice time, trying to do well in school, and then obviously trying to help your team win. But as a coach, you're practice planning, you're spending many nights in hotels, driving late at night, trying to go find players, to help build the team. And those aren't things you really think about when you're on campus and you're in the day to day. But I loved my time at UMass. Some of my best friends that are still my best friends today, talk with every day, that we were teammates together. We're in each other's weddings. And I just think the college experience in general is so so special. And now just being a little bit older, having time to kind of reflect, you just gain a lot of appreciation for the opportunity that you had to play Division I college athletics and get an education and meet some of your best friends. And really happy for the university and for the program. It's in really good hands right now with Carve and Uppy and Nolan. I know those guys, see those
Yeah.
guys in the rink too. And yeah, just and even, Josh Penn, Smitty, all these guys that are still
Still
around that are
here.
doing
Yep.
such a great job. Yeah, they're high-end people, high character people. So really happy for the program with where it's at and hopefully can continue to keep climbing.
Your social media handle says in a rink looking for hockey players. When you introduce yourself and you say, "Hey, you're from UMass," do you get a reaction from people, and what is the impression you think that that leaves?
Definitely. Even just new scouts or coaches and or, you're after a game and guys are hanging out and just trying to figure out how'd you get to where you're at, where are you from, where'd you play, or even talking to, players that we're going to interview for the draft and they take an interest to you and want to know kind of your background. And I would say recently, for sure, when I say UMass, everybody knows exactly what it is. They're kind of impressed by it. I think that's kind of a testament to the job that they've done there and their ability to win and bring in some high-end players and talent. So, for me, I'm definitely a proud alum. Um, I look back on all those teams that I was fortunate enough to play on with some really good players and even the coaches too, for sure. Obviously, we didn't have maybe some of the success that some of the program now has, but just really proud and happy to be able to say that I was a small part of it, and looking forward to the future to see what else that they can do.
Well, we're certainly proud of you and the work that you've done. And before I let you go, what's the next week, two look like for you as the NHL season started? But obviously, you're been traveling around. Where you go next, and what's in store?
Yeah, so I would say that the summers are pretty good for scouts. There's a couple things you have to do here and there, so it was great for me to spend a lot of time with my family. But once mid-September hits, it's pretty nuts. I would say from the 14th of September until the end of the month, I was gone actually 14 of 18 days. So just out in LA for a rookie tournament, went to Pittsburgh for the USHL showcase, then went to Minnesota to watch the North American League in high school. So that's a pretty tough grind. Now it kind of gets back to 2, 3 day weekends. Then once high school and prep school gets going, you kind of sprinkle in some midweek games. So yeah, it's full throttle now. Lots of planes, lots of rental cars, lots of hotels. But obviously too great to, the NHL season here, get an opportunity to, see our team play and see the greatest game in the world at the highest level,
Hope
which
you
is
keep
exciting.
hope you keep tabs on us too along those travels, Eddie.
Well,
Thanks.
of course. Yeah, of course we do.
All right, Eddie. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll check in with you down the line, man. Appreciate the time.
Great, Jay. Thanks a lot, man.
All right, he is Eddie Olczyk, and you can follow him on his social media as well. That has been our New Mass Minute. We'll see you next week. Thanks so much.